Welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly educational podcast. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist and nutritional blood microscopist. Today is September 12th, 2022, and this is podcast number 130. The next podcast will be October 10th. This podcast is on insomnia. I did a podcast on sleep a while ago, and that is podcast number 111. So again, this one's on insomnia. So one of the most important points is about sleeping pills, which a lot of people turn to when they have insomnia. And a big point of this podcast is sleeping pills are bad. So all of them have side effects. These side effects range from respiratory failure to infections, all the way up to cancer. So just taking 2 to 3 sleeping pills a week in a 2.5 year time frame greatly increases risk for mortality. So sleeping pills, not good. I'll get to more information on sleeping pills toward the end. Another thing I want to mention, it's a chemistry issue, and that is caffeine. So there is this term we use in kinetics in chemical reactions that we use the term half-life, and that's how long it takes for half of something to break down. So the half-life for caffeine is 6 hours, which means it takes 6 hours just to lose or break down 50% of the caffeine you've ingested. So if we take that out another cycle, in 12 hours, you still have 25% of the caffeine you ingested. So keep that in mind when consuming caffeine close to bedtime. The other consumption that people think either bothers them or doesn't bother them, or they use it to affect their sleep, is alcohol. So alcohol works to put you to sleep until it wears off, and that's typically during mid-sleep, which means you end up waking up in sometimes in the middle of the night. 3 big points I want to bring up, and the third one's probably the most important, but I've mentioned some of these before, but this is essentially an update. Blue light from TV and cell phone screens trick the brain into thinking it's morning, and that's why you don't want to go to bed right after seeing blue light. What you want is red light. So all you need to do is go to the store, buy a red light bulb, put it somewhere near where you're going to be right before bed. 10, 15 minutes of seeing red light will help you greatly. The next point is just use lavender tea or lavender oil. If you have issues with insomnia, lavender is just the best of the herbs to utilize. Some people don't like to drink tea a few hours before bed because it makes them get up to urinate. Just use the oil then. Get an essential oil of lavender that is also edible, and there's various ways you can use it, but it will help you greatly. The third item, which I believe is the most important, is how to fall asleep. And most of us have trouble falling asleep because we think when we get to bed. It's a perfect time to think. There's nobody around to bother us. There's no phone ringing. There's no TV going. There's no distractions. So we think of things, and what happens is it's impossible to fall asleep if you're thinking about something. But these are important thoughts. So what you do is you procrastinate them until the morning. Now, we all like to procrastinate, so it's an easy thing to do. If we procrastinate our thoughts to the morning, 2 things happen. Number 1, we fall asleep immediately. Try it. And number 2, those thoughts come rushing back into our head when we wake up in the morning. Guess what? It's much easier to get out of bed. So you get a double benefit from procrastinating your thoughts. Normally students do this when they have an exam in one day. they'll procrastinate all the way up to the final hour. Okay. Now, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, other than needing to get up to use the bathroom, it's hormones. It's a hormonal imbalance. That's why you're getting up. Maybe you're taking a bioidentical hormone, or you're putting on some cream, or you're taking some supplement that is affecting your hormones. So it's a hormonal imbalance, pretty much guaranteed. Now, adding to the concept of light, meaning you don't want the blue light from TVs, you want red light, there's something called bright light therapy. And the best way to do this is to get out in the sun. The benefit of being in the sun is you'll also make vitamin D, but there's many benefits to being out in the sun. We are light creatures. We need the sun. And bright light therapy helps both the elderly and the young. And here's why. The elderly tend to have a body clock that runs too fast. So typically elderly people go to bed early and get up early. And they just get into this habit because their body clock is running too fast. Being in the sun will help normalize that, where they're able to go to bed a little later and getting up a little later. Okay. Now, the young tend to do the opposite. Their body clock usually runs too slow, so they go to bed late, and then they get up late. They get into that habit. Same thing. Sunlight will help them balance that out so that their clock doesn't run too slow. The sun is great, just don't get a sunburn. The other thing I want to mention is sleep is typically in 90-minute cycles. So usually you would think of having 6 hours sleep, 7.5 hours sleep, or 9 hours sleep. So somewhere in there, somebody just rounded off the 7.5 hours to 8, assuming it takes some time to fall asleep. But it's 6 hours, 7.5 hours, and 9 hours. Unfortunately, those that need 9 hours sleep are typically linked to mortality. So it's a higher mortality risk if you're one of those people that really needs 9 hours sleep. So, and that's also tends to be based on hormonal imbalance. So if the hormones are in balance, you'll typically be able to go from 9 hours to the next cycle, which is 7.5 hours, which is considered ideal. Doesn't work that way for everyone, but it's something to keep in mind. If you need to get up in the middle of the night for whatever reason, do so. But take advantage of that time to meditate. So there are plenty of videos on how to meditate. I will tell you it all starts with breathing. So take advantage of the time. You can actually benefit from having to get up at the odd times in your life. You'll have to get up in the middle of the night. Something will disturb you. Now, when you do get up, and also when you're going to bed, don't ever look at the clock. Very bad. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, don't look at the clock. You don't know what time it is. You don't know if you need to get up in 10 minutes, and you don't know if you just went to bed 30 minutes ago. Don't look at the clock. Okay? When you go to bed, the best time to go to bed is the first onset of feeling tired. What leads to insomnia is fighting off that first onset of feeling tired, and then you have to wait for the next cycle of it to affect your body. So don't wait. Don't fight that feeling of needing to go to bed. Go to bed right when that starts. Now back to sleeping pills. Sleeping pills have a definite correlation with mortality. And I had mentioned previously in other videos, and this is very common in science, when people that are non-scientists, they will confuse a correlation with a causation. So sleeping pills have a correlation with mortality. That doesn't mean they cause mortality. So when studies are done, they'll find that, well, if people take sleeping pills, they tend to die at a younger age. That doesn't mean it kills them, but there is this correlation. And you'll see that throughout life. You'll see these studies, and they'll be real careful with their use of words they're going to say the word, there's a correlation between something with something else. But that doesn't mean there's a causation. And truly, for something to be important, you want a causation. Now, the sleeping pills that correlate with mortality, they're all the big ones, including Ambien and Lunesta and Sonata and many others. So be careful with sleeping pills. The other thing these sleeping pills lead to is depression, sleep apnea, and even suicide. Again, be careful. There's very little benefit taking sleeping pills. It's much better to do the things I mentioned with the red light and the lavender oil and procrastinating your thoughts. Things like that are going to be much more beneficial. If you are taking sleeping pills and you want to discontinue them, you're going to have to do so very slowly. So you don't want to go through a severe withdrawal. The sleeping pills are very, very strong. So that's what I have for today's podcast. Please leave a comment, and please don't keep me a secret.